Good morning, everybody. It's June 19th, 2024. This is a regular Ottawa City Commission meeting. Let's call roll, please.
Mayor Skidmore,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Present.
Commissioner Kaler, Commissioner Clayton,
Present.
and Commissioner Crowley.
Present.
Okay, we do have a quorum this morning. I welcome everybody here in the galleries as well as those watching or listening on social media. So we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Pastor Tiger Pennington.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Eternal and loving God, God who has granted us freedom and God who called Moses to say, "Let my people go," on this June the 19th, we acknowledge and celebrate freedom for all. And as this city commission gathers, oh God, where there are complex and competing needs, we ask for your divine wisdom. Where there is suffering, we ask for compassion. And we ask for creativity and creating an atmosphere for human flourishing for all in this great community. God, we give you thanks for those who have gathered to serve. And we ask that you would just grant them your wisdom in these days, in these moments, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Okay, we'll start with public comments. Do we have any signed up?
We have none registered.
Okay, we'll go on to item 7, which would be the appointments, proclamations, recognitions. We have Juneteenth proclamation, and this proclamation recognizing the effort to make Ottawa an inclusive community and honor the true meaning of the holiday. Richard Jackson will accept a proclamation read by Pro Tem Allen.
The proclamation reads as follows. Whereas Juneteenth is the longest-running African-American holiday, and whereas it recognizes June 19th, 1865 as the date the news of slavery reached enslaved people in Galveston, Texas. And whereas the Emancipation Proclamation that freed the enslaved people living in the Confederacy took effect January 1st, 1863, and was the ratification of the 13th Amendment. And whereas Juneteenth began primarily with church celebrations in 1866 and spread throughout the black communities, particularly in the South. And whereas between 1854 and 1861, people living in Kansas could decide if the state would allow slavery or the principle known as popular sovereignty. And whereas Kansas became known as Bleeding Kansas because of violence carried out by both sides, anti-slavery and pro-slavery supporters. And whereas Kansas had a reputation as a land of freedom and attracted a diverse group of people, not everyone enjoyed the same benefits. And whereas Kansas did not have any Jim Crow laws early in Kansas history, as time passed though, segregation became more common. And whereas the federal landmark ruling, Brown versus the Topeka Board of Education in 1954, allowed states to operate separate but equal schools. And whereas in 1881, Tinnen versus Ottawa was a prelude to Brown's similar ruling only regarding schools in Franklin County. And whereas the Ottawa swimming pool was segregated well into the 1960s, and Ottawa has dealt with the residue of segregation. And whereas Ottawa has worked to make this an inclusive community, let's use the Juneteenth holiday as an opportunity to honor the true meaning of the holiday and what it represents, and continue to work towards the promise of equality for all. Therefore, we, the governing body of the city of Ottawa, Kansas, do hereby proclaim June 19th, 2024 to be recognized as Juneteenth in the city of Ottawa, Kansas, signed this 19th day of June 2024 by our mayor, Michael Skidmore.
And Richard Jackson. Let me go ahead and give this to you first.
Yeah.
Go ahead and start.
Thank you, Mayor and City Commissioners, for taking time out of your busy schedule to do the proclamation and to recognize Juneteenth Day. I want to thank the city staff, particularly Gloria, because she gets the opportunity to write all of these proclamations, and and this one, I think she did quite a history lesson, not only of Juneteenth, but a little bit on Kansas and what Ottawa has accomplished along the way, or what we're still trying to do. I want to thank Mayor Pro Tem Emily for coming and judging the best boat at the duck contest, and must tell you, you never want to get into a situation where you have to judge the best of anything, because the losers aren't happy, and you have to deal with it, but she did a fine job on that. The proclamation pretty much covered everything on Juneteenth. Actually, the slaves really weren't free. Some were still held in bondage. It's not that some people in Galveston, Texas, didn't know that Lincoln had freed the slaves. They just refused to tell them, particularly those from the Confederate Army that hid out there. And even with the passing of that, we know the 40 acres and 1 meal never took place, because I believe it was Johnson who followed Lincoln, basically did away with that. So they never got the 40 acres and the mule. Many of them were still forced to live in slavery because they had nothing else to do. Others were taken advantage of. A couple things I want to mention here, reflecting the significant and various reasons why we have Juneteenth. One, it's a reflection and healing. Juneteenth allows us to acknowledge our past faults and heal current divisions. It is a day to recognize African American culture, heritage, and achievement. Moreover, it prompts us to consider the evolution of freedom and its meaning in our shared history. Many times it's not African American history, it's not white history, it's not Hispanic, it's history, period. And to say those that don't know their history are destined to repeat their history. So I think any holiday that we celebrate, we need to keep that in the mind. And I've often said many times that the city needs to set a time aside when I think of Legacy Square down there, the facility, ought to put it to some use, but we ought to have a day, whether we call it Ottawa's Day or whatever it is, where we can bring all of the different groups together at one time and celebrate their heritage and try to learn a little from each of us. Our nation's history and our journey, along with usually comes some type of celebration is complete with fruit. Certainly, Juneteenth is no different than any other one. I learned things looking back. I came across a section on food as well, using ribs, some good sort of stuff, watermelons. What else does you have? Well, on Juneteenth, it's red food. Now, the Chinese, they have red food they considered one of good luck and one of prosperity. On the African American side, good food stands for strength. But some of the things that they had was strawberries. It says these delightful red berries are available year-round and can be served on kebabs in fruit trays or with a whipped cream dip. That might be something I would eat. 2, tomato and mozzarella kebabs is simple yet tasty option using small tomatoes like cherry or grape varieties and fresh mozzarella to create appetizer kebabs, drizzled with balsam vinegar, olive oil, and Italian herbs or extra flavor. One more, cocktail sausage wrapped in bacon, classic potluck staple. Wrap cocktails, wieners with bacon and bake them in the oven. So they are great at room temperature. So, you know, sometimes food can be an opening to learn about somebody else, getting together, and that might be the first conversation that you have, that you begin to learn about somebody else. Oftentimes, I think we look at people, we deal with people, and we look at the negative as opposed to the it is what they have to offer. So, thank you again.
Well, thank you, Richard. You're making me hungry just with what you're talking about there, but nonetheless, one of the more things, always, anytime you're here, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you serving up here on this panel for many, many years. Thank you for that as well. Thank you for being here today. Move on to the consent agenda. We got the minutes from the June meeting, the May finance report, and the agenda approval. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
you approve the consent agenda?
A second. A second. All in favor? Aye. Same sign. Motion carries. We'll go on to item. This time, I'd like to give the commissioners a chance to consider any conflict or communication they've had that might influence the ability to consider today's issue. Hearing none, we'll go on to business. On to
Item A, comprehensive plan.
the city planner Martin will provide an overview of the following revision of the comprehensive. And Mr. Martin, go right ahead.
Morning, Commissioner. Hope everyone's having a lovely bar. So, as the item states, this is an update on the comprehensive plan revisions that the department is undertaking. Hold on. Learning how to use a remote. So the recommendation is that the City Commission supports and engages in the 2024 through 2025 comprehensive plan revision. And the purpose of the comprehensive plan is to present the vision and goals for the community and provide a foundation for land use regulations. The plan establishes where the community is today and generates a shared vision for where the community would like to see the city in the future and develops strategies and policies to achieve that vision. Ottawa has maintained a comprehensive plan for several decades. Staff is aware back into the 1970s as far as physical documents are concerned. So we do have a long history of having a comprehensive plan, and many elements of that plan, such as future land use, are routinely referenced in regard to planning applications and informed decisions regarding land use and infrastructure. So as part of this revision, which is a fairly major undertaking, one that is much needed as the plan was last significantly updated in 2004, staff has approached several practices and standards for updating this plan and has established the following pathway. First would be the preparation and initial assessment, which is reviewing the current plan and setting clear goals and objectives. For this, staff has begun undertaking the review of the current document and addressing key issues, which is included in the analysis in the memo that was provided to the commissioners. The revised plan should reflect the city's current long-term vision and goals while also addressing updated and outdated information, and staff has generated a project timeline that was included in the packet as well that would lead to the adoption of the revised plan in early to mid 2025. A second key factor is public engagement, developing a plan that in community outreach, and staff have an outreach plan timeline. It includes several community engagement and information sessions over the coming months, the first being next Thursday, and opportunities for additional sessions as the plan progresses. One of the key goals is ensuring that the community has opportunities to engage with this plan, and staff has also set up a comprehensive plan webpage, which is included in the plan, but for those listening, it is ottawaks.gov/comprehensive-plan, with additional information and resources, as well as a community survey that is going live today. Understanding that this process will take several months, staff does plan on continuously updating methods and approaches in community engagement to ensure that we are reaching a wide variety of residents and the concerns and ideas are reflected in this revised plan. Item 3 is the data collection and analysis, which includes gathering the existing data and conducting new research as needed. And this is an ongoing process within the revision process. Staff is coordinating with the city and community bodies to ensure that information within the plan is updated to reflect the needs and changes of Ottawa in 2024. This information will be collected at regular intervals and updated within the draft document. This is outlined within the timeline provided in the packet and below. in item 4, drafting the plan. And that includes the structure, content, and incorporating the feedback from the data collection. And we have begun a draft document of the plan, which is included in the packet as well, that begins to address some of the structural and content concerns of the current plan. Increasing accessibility and knowledge of the plan is a key consideration in this revision, and creating a plan that is more readable, modern, and just generally reflective of the community today is a major goal of this revision. As chapters are reviewed and revised over the next several months, these revisions are going to be incorporated into the new document to create a clearer picture of Ottawa today and where we hope to be in the future. And then the final is the review and adoption, which includes finalization, adoption, and ultimately implementation. So we do have a target date of early 2025 for finalization of the revised plan. This would lead to staff and community review and the adoption process as outlined within our city codes. Implementation would then follow that adoption as the plan is utilized in various community development processes, and this includes transportation planning, zoning, community improvement. It's a wide-reaching document with a lot of implementation areas. So as I mentioned before, the current Ottawa Comprehensive Plan was adopted in 2004 and has not received a fully comprehensive review and revision since this time. And the intent of the revision is to amend and update the plan to reflect the changes in the community that have occurred over the past 20 years. As I've stated, we are coordinating with internal departments to thoroughly review and address key issues, including the following. So that includes the format and style of the plan. Ideally, it is a user-friendly document that's accessible not only to the staff who utilize it, but also the wider community so they're able to understand the goals of the city and the strategies in place to help us get to those goals. The content of the current plan is also based on 20-year-old information. So things like population projections, utility usage, and other data are pretty out of date within the document. So updating that plan would address these issues and better reflect the demographic and build changes in Ottawa since 2004. And then it is also important to review the goals, visions, and policies of the currently adopted plan and distinguish between what has worked for the community since 2004, what hasn't worked, and what do we need to change or add since that plan was adopted. And we have begun this coordination, this revision in coordination with the Planning Commission and internal staff, and have scheduled public engagement and information sessions starting again next Thursday, 6/27. That one will be from 6 to 8 p.m. actually here in the Commission chambers. And then the next one is going to be July 9th, and that will be at the Ottawa Recreation Commission, also from 6 to 8. Locations for the later July and early August are TBD at the time. We are trying to make sure that we have a breadth of locations for community members to come out and engage with us. So we're looking for some of the best spots for that. But again, as I've mentioned, the webpage is also live with information including these dates, as well as a little background on the purpose of the project, as well as links to our current zoning code, comprehensive plan, and I believe our future land use plan as well. And as I've mentioned, a survey will be going live up today, which is a really great opportunity for members of the community to engage directly with important questions that we have about the state of Ottawa and what we would like to see more of or where we think we can improve. So that's going to be a really great tool for us as well. And this is just an example of sort of the editing that we're doing. Again, you have a rough draft of the introductory document included with your packet, but a little bit of a visualization just showing kind of the transition that we're working to do with these documents. The current document is very 2004. I remember clip art like that. It was cool. And we are working it and making it a little more streamlined and accessible. Visualization can be a very important tool for people to feel like they can approach and understand a document. So making something that doesn't look necessarily like a block of code or text is one of the big changes that are going to be happening as we revise this plan. And again, as I kind of have worked through this, one thing I would note is that we are not completely abolishing the existing comprehensive plan. Again, it's a revision and an update. So we are working on this all in-house. And it is in the early stages, and with this being done internally, schedules are likely to shift as the need arises, and we do anticipate bringing this plan up for adoption in the second quarter of 2025. But again, this is all done internally. We're working to make sure that the document still builds on what we feel is a successful plan from 2004, but is updated to reflect things that have happened in the past 20 years, and there's been a lot of changes in the last 20 years. So it's a lot of content, but we feel like a lot of the existing goals and policies are strong. We just want to make sure that we're making them reflect the community of Ottawa in 2024. When it comes to actual considerations for this item, there are no financial considerations at this time. Again, we are working on this internally and do not have any expected expenditures at this time. Again, as we progress through this plan, there is the possibility of third-party consultants or something of that nature potentially being explored, but that is not by any means anything we have finalized. And again, we're working on keeping this as an internal project where we can update it based on the information that we have as a city. And then legal considerations, none as well. This is actually something we should be doing probably a bit more regularly than we had in the past 20 years, so we're kind of skewing back towards the correct legal considerations on this one. And then recommendations and actions. No actual action at this time, but we do encourage the commission to promote the plan update and engagement in informational sessions among friends, family, and community members. And again, just plugging this one more time, the first informational session will be held next Thursday. That's June 27th from 6 to 8, and that will be here in the commission chambers at City Hall.
I was going to say, it's typically not normal to go 20 years without amending this, I would assume, right? Do you have any experience or recommendation on how often it should be looked at?
I believe ours requires an annual review just in general, just making sure things are generally up to date. And I think there have been sporadic check-ins on the plan over the past 20 years. It just hasn't been comprehensive throughout the entire document, which is what we're really aiming to do. And I will say 20 years is a long time. My previous city, it was 60, so I think we're still pretty on track there. So 20 years is not an uncommon horizon for adopted comprehensive plans. I believe we are targeting a 10-year horizon on this one. The 2030s would be the next significant update, but 10 to 20 is a pretty typical time frame we see. But again, I think we've just been a little more sporadic on our updates.
Very good. Okay, anybody have more questions of Zach?
Do you know, one question I saw in here that the projection for housing is based on population, indicates up to 130 housing units added annually. Do you have an idea of what we have been doing the roughly past few years, 5 years, what those numbers might be? If we're kind of on pace for 130 a year, are we half of that?
I would need to check on that, actually. We have that study upstairs, and I apologize, I cannot remember those numbers offhand. I believe based on our population growth, we're probably a little bit lower, but I would need to confirm with that.
Thank you.
Any more questions of Zach? If not, I guess we're good. Appreciate your input and your report. Thanks.
Thank you, commissioners.
We'll go on next to the project updates with our review our current project and updates for the last 30 days for capital improvement updates. Brian?
Honorable Mayor and Commission. This is our monthly check-in, and the presentation's still evolving. And we'll start off with a recap over the planned and anticipated slides for our upcoming projects. Funding, particularly the 2022A issuance, and then we'll get into the actual underway projects such as Mulberry and Dundee to kick us off. The upcoming projects that we have here are HVAC here at City Hall, OMA's boiler, the Commission Chambers technological upgrade and layout to be more conducive to streaming and the technical advances that have been made since this space was last updated. I think even a little before the probably 25 years. So about 5 years past the last comp plan. Completed projects to date are the Law Enforcement Training Center and our power quality study for circuits 8 and 10 that serve the north part of town and specifically our northeast industrial park. We will be looking to add the City Hall security enhancements here within the next 30 days, so we should have that added to the list next. This is the improvements that were funded with our 2022A issuance. the remodel at the OMA, the boiler system, flood mitigation, HVAC, second floor at City Hall, and a contingency. And again, this is our security enhancements here at City Hall, and with that, you'll notice that technically it's currently in progress, but we are anticipating the final invoicing and punch list completion walkthrough in the next 30 days. So that should be moved for my next report to our completed projects. Mulberry and Dundee. This is that geometric improvement for that intersection that will, its redesign alleviates the stormwater issues that we have flowing there. And I know Director Hafley had shown some previous damage to the inlets where the semis continually roll over because that's essentially a 1960s style residential right-of-way and design. So it's a really tight apex there. And so that's going to modernize that and make it more conducive to heavy truck traffic for semi-trailers. Our access management and K68 plan, we will be presenting that to you at, I believe, our July 24th meeting. And so we'll have the engineers from GBA and KDOT officials here to present that improvement, which is, that access management plan, which has targeted an evolutionary approach. In other words, we know that because there's not build out there currently, that it'll be phased in. So it's been presented to allow for adjacent property access as this evolves. The taxiway reconstruction project, this is for the design, and we will be presenting at the next upcoming meeting the design bid award for the construction of this project. And I know that it was discussed when we had the budget presentation that we have an increased transfer from the general fund this year to help us make the targeted budgeted amount necessary for improvement. So of course all of this would be to get the construction done, subject to all of the knock-on effects that go with the budget process and our allocation of resources. Our our splash pad, I know here at City Hall we've received a number of comments, all of which have been positive, and I think there's even been comments by some longstanding residents that this was one of the more beneficial and well-received improvements in their lifetime. So that says something, because I'm approaching my 54th year and this gentleman was older than me. So I think that speaks volumes.
And the hotter it gets, the more it'll be used. So that's
Exactly. And I did want to state that our wonderful Parks Department have adjusted the hours from 9 to 9, and then it'll be curtailed at 7 for the concerts.
Great.
Our playground equipment, this project will kick off just following the week of the July 4th Independence Day holiday week. So that'll give folks in town visiting, utilizing the splash pad for our celebrations, an opportunity to still utilize the playground equipment before we begin the demolition process for installing new and more modern equipment. Our water tower projects currently underway. The project is progressing, and as Director Riney had stated a while back, that the outside looks like it's ready to go, but there's a lot of development going on the inside related to that, as well as making those accommodations at our treatment facility and getting all of the appurtenances and the plumbing connected so that everything will flow appropriately. And so we're still, a good ways out before that comes online. And what we'll want to do then when that gets closer is have a public education process that will be early and often, if you will, for communicating what our residents can expect and why this is occurring. And here's the generator that we're using as standby for our raw water and can also be used elsewhere as needed. And this is part of that enhancement to our system to assist with improving our distribution. And I want to point out that this is an ARPA fund project as well. And then the base grant, which is the gas supply to Proximity Park and can also be used additionally throughout as we grow in that south corridor as well. But it's essentially ready to go, and now we're just anticipating the state review and processing so that then at that stage invoicing and the expenditures can commence. Our automated meter replacement is still awaiting delivery of the proper meters. Director Riney, and I don't think Scott's here, but we had a shipment received. However, if it's any indication of what Kurt Altick and the folks at our warehouse, they conduct their due diligence and cross-reference the load with what we were to receive and realize that they had sent us the wrong items for what we had actually ordered to integrate into our system. So we were able to get that turned around immediately and want to commend our folks for being aware and taking the appropriate steps to cross-reference what we had requested with what was received. And then our Northeast Lift Station. So this is in the final phases, and we hope to be able to have that transition to close as well. And this is, again, a look back at the last 30 days. So they have been doing some startup and testing of that as we move forward. And our 17th and 19th Street water line replacement is completed. Now it's just site remediation, and it takes approximately 6 weeks for that ground to fully settle in its finished state, if you will, to see if it needs additional topsoil, infill, regrading, or whatever because of settling or weather environmental events that may damage the construction footprint there. Our water treatment plant study is, I would say, 95% complete, and I know staff has been reviewing that diligently, and I was able to participate in the last review, and so we're waiting on that final blessing to occur. And then from there, our assistant utility director, Scott Sneathen, will begin work on a strategic plan as far as, okay, here's what the evaluation was, and here's how we will look to try and address the issues identified and the remediation steps necessary in a tiered approach. So that way, even though we may not have the resources available, we'll be able to identify low-hanging fruit that we can knock out right away, as well as what we'll need to be setting aside for those larger, higher cost improvements. So that is all that we have for you at this time. If you got any questions for myself or a member of our team, we'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions anybody have?
One question, Brian. I saw the 2,600 meters were delivered in May, and they were incorrect and returned.
Yes.
So that'd be the order from 23 or 22. Do we have an ETA on getting the correct units? Because I know the other ones won't be here until February of 25.
Yeah, and I will defer to Director Riney, but my understanding is that it could be a while, but I don't think it's going to be an entire year.
Yeah, Mayor and Commissioners.
Yeah, the 26 meters that arrived
Slide that back. Sorry.
were the ones that we were given the February 25 delivery date.
Okay.
And they showed up quite unexpectedly in May of 24 and were terribly incorrect.
Okay.
So we don't have a new delivery date, so the assumption is we're back to February of next year.
Okay.
So nothing changed. There's been no good explanation as to how those showed up, whatever that is, 8 months early.
Yeah.
But yeah, the programming on them, the nomenclature, everything was incorrect, so.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
We were excited when they showed up.
Any more questions anybody have? It's a good report. It's always good to have these updates and see where we're heading and everything. Keep it in front of us, so thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Next, we got the 2025 operating budget, special revenue funds, Finance Director Landis.
Thank you. So we have a couple of funds that we did talk about some of our special revenue funds at the last meeting, and we had a few just to finish up our conversation with for today. And the first two are our special sales tax funds, and they are specifically related to projects, and they had a specific purpose. And the information that's in the packet is just to show you that we're nearing the end actually on both of them, not just for debt payoff, but also the sunsetting of those sales taxes. And so I wanted to bring some of those key points to your attention. So the first one is the special sales tax that was for Proximity Park. And this is a 1/2 cent sales tax that was approved in 2015 by the community to develop the 300 acres at Proximity Park for industrial use and to fund those debt payments and improvements until that sales tax sunsets at July 1 of 2026. And the debt issues that are related is the 2017A, 2018B, and the 2020A. The first two mature in 2026, about the same time as the sales tax sunsets, and then the 2020A was an extended financing of improvements, and so it does not actually mature until 2050. However, the generation of sales tax in that fund and the fund balance, as you'll see on the next couple of slides, it will be enough to be able to retire that debt early and get that off of our books and still have cash remaining for other improvements if necessary at that park. Some of the points from the budget that was in the packet for you is that in 2024, we had the $220,000 in land acquisition, the $850,000 roughly in all 3 years for bond and interest payments for those debt issuances that we just discussed. And then also, we received the $5 million base grant, and 2 of the 3 projects were directly related to Proximity Park infrastructure and improvements. And so we used a portion of that sales tax to transfer to a grant fund to offset the 25% grant match. But in addition to that, out of the 3 projects that were proposed, we got a $5 million grant, but really the estimated cost initially was $8 million. So there is still some transfers to be made as those projects become complete and as we move ahead with each of those. So we do have to, we will likely need to come back and revisit this fund and whether or not there's an amendment needed for 2024 and better analyze what needs to be transferred out for 25. Beyond that, though, there's no other planned expenditures beyond the debt payments at this time. Right now, there's nothing set in our capital improvement plan for additional improvements there. That's all reflected here in these tables. And again, if you look at the fund balance history, you can kind of see that in 2027, we through into our extended forecast, which you don't necessarily see in those tables up above, where the remaining payoff balance for that long-term debt issuance, and then after that, we don't show any expenditure activity, but that there should still be an ending fund balance there, and I believe, I want to say that off the top of my head, it's about 1.5 million maybe in additional expenses, so maybe there would be roughly 2.5 million if our sales tax estimates are correct, and they're pretty conservative going forward. So somewhere around that amount being eligible and available for other improvements if needed. Do you have questions on this special sales tax fund?
Any questions? Guess you're doing a good job.
All right.
Keep on going.
All right. This next fund is also a special sales tax fund. This one is actually for wastewater treatment plant improvements, and it was put in place in 2001, and there was debt issuances there, and then we did a refinancing in 2014. So the way that this is written is that the sales tax will sunset when the debt matures. And so the main issuance for the treatment plant matures in October 1 of 2024, or the September to October payment in 24. And so the sunset will happen then for the 1/10 cent sales tax for this special sales tax for the water treatment or wastewater treatment plant as well. There were other related improvements that sales tax can be used for, and so the remaining cash balance will be used to make the rest of the payments for those related improvements. That was the 2021A refunding issuance. It doesn't get us all the way to the end, at least not in our current projections through October of this year, but it does get us a lot closer, and that does provide a little bit of assistance or help to the wastewater fund, because it would be responsible for paying for the remaining debt payments beyond that point. I believe I covered those highlights, and you can kind of see that activity in this fund. There isn't nearly as much of a remaining balance in this fund at the end of, or when this sales tax does sunset, but largely because it was only 1/10 of a cent, and projecting using it for making those debt payments. Do you have questions on this? It's a pretty cut and dried fund.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
It's not that I have a question. I just want to go ahead and highlight it again so I can make sure that the public understands. The 1/10 sales tax will sunset October 1, 2024. Correct?
Yes, and we've notified the state.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, and I'm glad that we've notified the state, but here's the thing. I think we should also notify the citizens. The citizens should know, because here's the thing. Those are the people that are paying the sales tax. And quite often we hear, tax is too high, tax is too high, tax is too high. You overtax, you overtax, you overtax. Guess what? Your tax is going down October 1. It's going down. And we're not going to buy commercials. We're not going to put out banners. We're not going to do any of that, but we're going to do what we said we did as a commission when we took on this debt. We paid down the debt, and it will go down. So the public needs to know we've followed what we've said we were going to do, and there will be a relief, albeit 1/10 of a sales tax or 1/10 of a cent. It still is relief to every single citizen that pays sales tax in our community. And I hope that we tell more people about that. Because it's us being transparent, and it's us being saying, hey, we did what we said we were going to do, and we followed our word.
Yeah, that's
So,
a great
good job.
point. Very great point.
I'll just add to that too, October 1, so the sales taxes through September 30 would eventually come into our coffers in December or a few months after the effect, right? So-
November would likely be the last distribution that would come in, and then there will likely be some straggling after that point, but probably much smaller
And
amounts
that's
coming
one
in
thing. That's a
beyond
good
then.
point Sarah brought up, but I think it's important that people, if they see money still coming in November, they'll know why. It did end October 1 technically, but we still have money coming in on an accrual basis. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else on that fund? No? Okay.
Okay.
All right, the third fund we brought to you today is our golf course fund. And really, what was placed in the packet for you was really intended as more of a conversation piece. And yes, we have a golf course fund, and at this point, though, it doesn't necessarily fund operations. It doesn't fund operations at all. It really just funds some ancillary expenditures that we have after we acquired the course in 2022. And so if you would allow me, I want to give you a little bit of a background and then kind of tell you where we've been working at the staff level and why we're bringing it to you today for more conversation. So we did acquire the 9-hole facility in 2022 with a memorandum of understanding with the Ottawa Country Club Association, and an initial payment was made at the end of 2022, and then the final payment was made to pay off a loan associated with the golf course early in '24, so early this year that occurred. And the current operations of the golf course are held by JPM Enterprises, which is better known in our community as Great Life Golf and Fitness. And that operating lease really is through March 31st of 2026, the way it's written. So it was an original 5-year lease when it was with OCCA. We were still under a rolled over 5-year lease, and we still have approximately 2 years left on that lease. In our conversations with them, we've been able to really work together to have conversations about the status of the course, the things that need to be done at the course, and also very open conversations about where do we think this needs to go, and also the timing of when the city might take over the operations piece of the golf course. That's what we're bringing really to you today as a conversation, is when do we anticipate wanting to do so, and what that might look like is basically 2 different options. We can bid operations out for a management company to take over and manage long-term, or we can hire a golf pro, head golf pro general manager for the course, who would hire a ground superintendent and the staff needed, and then manage it on behalf of the city and in coordination with city management and at the direction of the city commission. And so what we put together was a couple of different options for you based on a lot of conversation and research. So we have worked with a couple of different consultants and also a couple of vendors, just to get some ideas on what the cost might be for us to operate as opposed to the current company. And we've worked with them to kind of see what they spend on things. We really just wanted that background information, and I really appreciate them working with us or working with me to kind of educate me on what some of those expenditures are. So working with the PGA and their career consulting services, we've talked about bringing on a head golf pro and the ability to offer additional programming through the golf course, and what that might look like for us. And some of those programs might look like a senior league, a junior golf league, twilight league, a family golf, junior golf, just a variety of things. Plus, if you have a head pro on site and available, they can give lessons. And really the whole goal, as you discussed when we first acquired the golf course, was to bring more people back to the Ottawa golf course and to make that really a thriving amenity in our community. So we took that approach in all of our conversations. And then the rest of the story comes with the expenditure side, right? And we all knew that there's some capital improvements that need to happen there. And really, this is an overhead view. An overhead view that kind of shows the golf course, and if you notice, I might just list a couple of the things that we've talked about. So the cart paths need some renovation. The depth of the pond is something that we've talked about. We've gotten some estimates on what that might look like to clear that pond and be able to store more water in that pond for irrigation purposes. We've also discussed with our staff whether there's a possibility for us to do that work as well. The overflow from the pond, which has from time to time been an issue, but also retainage of that water and the irrigation system itself, as well as the pump for the irrigation system and just the system across the entire course, has some improvements that need to be made. The clubhouse itself needs improvements or maybe a future replacement. The pool hasn't been used in 2 years due to the the repairs that would absolutely need to be made in order for it to be useful. So maybe pool demolition and the installation of something that might be revenue generating there. Or certainly something that would complement the golf course itself overall. The driving range is really not capable of being used as a typical driving range, and so maybe converting that to a short game area instead until at some future point we can determine how a driving range or we can better utilize the space for that. Those decisions could be made. And then obviously some tree maintenance and plantings that need some attention across the course as well. Overall, the comments that we've received about the course itself have been pretty positive, and it looks good when you're driving by. From an aerial view, obviously you can see a few things that maybe you don't necessarily see as you're just driving by, but there's some maintenance and some capital improvement dollars there that have to be invested. And our real conversation then became, okay, does it all have to happen at one time, or can we do that over time? And really, it comes down to making sure that we get the right people on the course to tell us what that looks like, and then get the right estimates. We have some ballpark estimates, and I've worked a few of those into those options or those budgetary options that I've proposed. But we can't guarantee that that's everything, and I also can't guarantee that it couldn't be something different than that if we plan a little more carefully. The additional items to think about here are equipment. We don't own any equipment other than a tractor that is not very useful at this point in time. And so equipment replacement is worked into both of these budget scenarios as well. And that is, I think, something that we can work into over time, but there's a couple of pieces of equipment that we need right up front. And then the rest of it can be conversational and capital planning. Option one really was to just begin in 2025. What that might look like is that we would start the hiring process basically immediately. PGA Career Services has said they would help us write the job description, and they would help us with that search, bringing somebody on board nearing the end of the year, essentially putting them into place at the top of the year. Some of the things that need to be done before that happens is, putting our policies in place, converting software, getting the lease on carts, all of those things are all items that would need to be taken care of prior to really taking over operations at the top of 2025. On the expenditure side, we have all of those things we just talked about, a few capital improvements, some equipment purchases, and of course salaries and just regular ongoing operational cost. I think that we've put together something that pairs fairly well between our expected revenues and the expected expenditures, although of course we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. That's the difficulty with year one, and that won't change regardless of when we start this process. But ultimately, in the end, what it comes down to is, in order to accomplish some of those improvements and purchase the equipment that's needed, I'm estimating that we need somewhere around $175,000 to $200,000 to get us started in that direction. I, of course, could be off a little bit on that. We could be off on a couple of these numbers. It's really just a first stab at putting a conversation piece in front of you and determining whether you want to jump into this in 25 or 26. The difference between the two options really is only that by beginning in 2026, you have one more year of lease payments that come in and one more year of planning. So JPM currently pays $2,000 a month for lease of the course, and that goes directly to this golf course fund. And so that's the difference between your beginning fund balances between the couple of years. Really, there's nothing else besides that. We do have a little bit of insurance cost and some very minor miscellaneous expenditures that we pay, but otherwise that's the difference between the two proposals. Otherwise, the costs and revenues are pretty much all projected the same between both options. So ultimately, we put that in front of you to talk about what your desire is as far as operating the golf course. In our very first conversations, Everybody was really excited about being able to see new and different things, bringing in new people from the outside, bringing that excitement back to Ottawa with a really great golf course as an amenity in our community. And so we wanted to make sure we weren't putting that off. And again, appreciate the conversations and the ability for us to make adjustments to the lease with JPM. One of the things that, before we really dig into conversation, I wanted to just leave with you is, in our conversations with a couple of different consultants, 9-hole play is actually really making a resurgence, and there are some really, really successful 9-hole courses out there. I think in the beginning, a lot of people have, were concerned that maybe in order to make this work, it needed to be an 18-hole course, and that's definitely not the information we're getting at this point. And really, for 9-hole courses overall, they see an uptick of about 15% in play activity. And something that's kind of changed since the COVID time is that it used to be that you would see certain players on the course at certain times of the day, and that's really changed, and players are really there any time of the day, any day of the week now. And so it's just a little bit different time for a 9-hole course, and probably an exciting time for us to be able to make those improvements and put this in motion the way that we'd like to see it done. So with that, really, we're looking for your feedback so that we know how to put together the budget for the golf course in 2025.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing up that it's an exciting time too. I definitely think it is. Does this, on the option 1, salaries and benefits, that 306, is that that PGA Pro and then room for grounds crew, some folks kind of a greenskeeper, someone kind of on that side as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So it would be a head pro, which we would use as a general manager, and then a ground superintendent and some daily staff, probably part-time staff that are there and available to run the course, or be available at the course for check-ins, for cart checkouts, all the things that daily operations.
I was thinking about the kitchen. Isn't it being leased out on a monthly basis to Prairie Star still?
It is.
Is that included in the income, or is that?
It is.
Okay, very
Yes.
good. And that's what I wondered about with the lease not expiring until 2026. And if we hire a pro in next year, that relationship for that interim time, I mean, that we think will go smoothly, or is there any concerns about that?
No, we would we would terminate the
terminate
agreement,
the
the
lease.
lease agreement with JPM when we
Okay.
bring on
And does that cost us
golf-
anything to terminate the lease, or has it been a year to year?
That would need to be negotiated, and that's something that we've been working. City Attorney Finch has been in every conversation we've had, and so there would probably be some negotiating that needs to happen there. As a side note, their lease goes through March 31st, which means that their current memberships go through March 31st as well. So there would need to be some sort of adjustment there on expected revenue that comes in between January and March. There's lots of different ways that members can pay. Not everybody pays annually up front. Some of that's a monthly income. So some things that we would definitely need to negotiate, and potentially some upfront cost related.
Since we're initially new at this as far as owning a golf course, municipal golf course, is it expected that we would make a profit, or is this something we just shoot for break even?
Well, if you look here, this is really, I'm showing a deficit just for operations.
Yeah.
And I don't know that really continues long term, at this level. However, I would expect that with most amenities like this, it's very similar to the operations of a swimming pool. It's not necessarily a 12-month operation. It can get close to 10 given some really good weather. But there are going to be it's likely going to have a deficit every year. The difficulty is judging exactly where that's going to be. And by bringing someone on who knows what they're already doing and has experience in at another course and can bring that to the table and some new exciting things, we might have a much better opportunity to lower that amount. And again, this was just based on me wanting to give you something very conservative on the revenue side and the likelihood of some upfront expenditures.
And most municipal courses do receive a general fund subsidy, even the higher end ones like Sand Creek.
Just added amenity to our community, I guess. Okay.
And was this 557, the sales and service, was that kind of with working with those other groups, kind of their estimate that they kind of came up with? in terms of what you might expect that first year?
No, actually, I used a little bit of our conversation piece to put that together, but really, we used some of the current revenues at our course and made some small adjustments based on what we know and the differences between us operating and an outside entity operating. Same on the expenditure side. For example, we wouldn't need to pay property taxes on that piece. There's small pieces here and there that were adjusted, but largely we use some information we found online from other 9-hole courses. We've looked at their membership and greens fees and cart fees to kind of determine where we were at. So it's a really, I would say, really good stab in the dark, if you will. And again, it's really going to take bringing on someone who knows this business better than I do to tell us if we're really on point here and to determine if we need to make some adjustments, both on the revenue and expenditure side. And really, again, I want to just reiterate that it's really about making sure we have those people to give us the right advice on putting together that business plan.
Do you know on that, has there been any contact with K-State? I know K-State has a golf course management degree path, Turfgrass Science, in terms of potentially lessening our expenses in terms of salary by maybe working with them somehow?
We have not made those contacts. We worked with PGA mostly from the standpoint of we know that we need to have a general manager that knows golf and the business of golf. And that it was our first look. We can go, really, there's two routes you can go. You can go by hiring a ground superintendent that would be your general manager and then hire a head pro or someone that can do lessons and manage those leagues and all of that beyond that. Or you can go with the head pro general manager route and then hire a ground superintendent or work with someone like K-State and we might be able to lessen those. I would say that I was, again, I think we definitely need to go back and sharpen our pencil on this. I don't think that that's where we were at in bringing this conversation to you. It was more about what does this look like just with these first estimates, and then we'll go from there working with those outside agencies and get us really in a better position with a true business plan for it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions anybody have?
I think maybe not so much a question, but a concern, and I know we've been hearing a lot from citizens about the state of the course currently. If we wait, do we probably risk it being in further disrepair in 2026? I essentially would be going into a worse situation than we would be if we tried to take it over, or tried to do it now rather than wait?
I don't know that I can really answer that question quite yet. I don't know that it is in a terrible state as it is. And again, I think most people who play there are like, this is a fine course. I believe that a lot of the conversation was more centered around the availability and the management of the operational management overall, and maybe getting in there and making a few small adjustments. Things like the cart path needing to be repaired and renovated, that's probably more of an immediate thing that we probably need to consider doing, whether we're on-site managing it or not, because we own it and that's a capital improvement that probably needs to be made. Making the financial plans for being able to make the other repairs and the future planning, we can be doing that at the same time as well. So I guess I can't really answer you directly on that.
It's probably more rhetorical anyway, but
Yeah.
that's a concern.
Good start. Any more questions? Guess we're good. Thanks, Melanie. Good report. Appreciate that.
Thank you, and I really do want some feedback from you as the commission, because we're at the end stages of putting together the budget. So if we'd like to put together an operating budget for 2025 and consider that it will require a general fund subsidy, we really can't move ahead with the general fund, putting it together until we really have some direction on how you'd like to move with the golf course.
Okay. We're talking about the 200,000 here, right? Basically.
Roughly.
Roughly, yeah, right, good. What's the feel of the commission? Any comments?
For one, I would say am definitely in favor of option one. Looking at our projected rental income, as Mayor Pro Tem Allen mentioned, I think, the degradation of the course in another year compared to $24,000 is a, you know, a pretty close approximation, and I think there's a lot of work that could be done if the sooner that we start that maintenance. I know we all received a letter from the Friends of the Ottawa Golf Course, and reading through their list, basically everything they list is course related. And so I think the sooner that we could really start to get to some of those kind of low hanging fruits that really relate to playability, I would definitely be in favor of kind of the option one that you have presented.
Okay.
I too would be in favor of option one. I think we need to rip the Band-Aid off and start that process. And let's be frank here. The condition of the course today is not in that good a condition to start off with. So another year is not going to make that much of a difference. But I would like to see that process start right away. Get somebody in there who really knows what they're doing. And I think we can see the fruits of their labor quite quickly, even just in a change of people running the course. And see some of that revenue kind of grow next year instead of waiting a year afterwards.
I agree. I'm in favor of option one for those reasons as well.
Okay. Sarah, how do you feel?
Seems like you have a consensus.
We're kind of looking like more and more that way. Well, that's what I'm kind of looking at that too and thinking ahead. You know, we do need a golf course here. And I think smaller communities than us even have a municipal course. And they're able to handle that somehow in some way. And I would think, yeah, we definitely need this facility. We committed a lot of money to it a couple of years ago when we purchased it. So not a lot, but a reasonable amount of money. And I think it's important that we take that purchase seriously and then move forward as soon as possible when we have the opportunity to do so. So I would agree with everyone else on that option one.
Okay, well, we will move ahead with preparing a budget for you to review. We'll bring it back to you when we discuss the final budgeted funds along the lines of the general fund, library, debt service, and we'll review the golf course budget as we put that together and bring that to you in a summary format then as well.
Sounds good to me. All right, wonderful.
Okay.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And we do have our comments by our city manager.
And we'll make this brief. Want to highlight that we had completed the arterial roadway markings, so we pointed out that was underway last week, and so that's now been completed. And that was 32,700 feet of yellow stripe and 21,875 of white stripe, or edge line marking and center line marking. Point out our city band concert series with our next event occurring on June 25th. Last time you'll see the slide this year, but we have Fishing with the Firefighter. We asked folks can go online at tickettailor.com/events. Fishing's Future, and that's with a /. Anyway, go to Facebook and you can hit that link directly either through the fire department or the City of Ottawa's Facebook page. And from Orlis Cox, they'll go across to our detention basins and be able to utilize some fun time with Ottawa's bravest. This month's ongoing adventure begins at your library June calendar of events. So it's currently the 19th. So just point out that there's Candyland games and intermediate robotics occurring today, if anyone's interested. And of course, the ever popular Minecraft crew is ongoing throughout all of the weeks. I want to just highlight that we'll be having a review of our general fund and focus on revenues at that point, and we'll go from there. And then our tentative agenda items for the 26th, we will have our presentation for Dan Riney, our utility director, who's retiring and leaving us at the end of this month. We'll have our budget discussion, monthly reports from our partners, airport master plan design consultant RFQ, and an easement vacation in the 1000 block in North Cherry. And if there are no further questions for myself, or I think Director Landis has some additional, go ahead.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Brian.
Brian, while you're there, you mentioned the band concerts, and then earlier in the splash pad, they mentioned changing the schedule on those nights.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so do we have a way, I guess to let folks know, I'm just imagining families getting children ready, thinking it's open till 9, showing up, and having that, will we shoot
That-
something out?
That's a
probably
good
say
idea.
tonight we're-
We'll make sure that we put something out on Mondays and Tuesdays just to remind folks
Okay.
that we have a curtailment.
Yeah, just on those days?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And then, of course, that'll end after July, what, second's the last concert? And so after that, it'll go back to 9 o'clock every night, I'm guessing, on the splash pad, but we can adjust that, I guess, so. Good.
It's going to be adjusted with the sun. I mean,
Yeah.
we have to remember the
Yeah.
sun is going to, after
So-
summer solstice, it will start getting
Definitely.
shorter.
Oh, that's right, you're right.
Yeah, we can. That's
We just wanted to clarify that on the golf course, that we'll be coming back to you as we will be negotiating a new, essentially an amended lease to concur. So that way we're able to take over and assume responsibilities during the 2025 year, so.
Sure, I understand it. Everybody else? Any questions on that? We're good? All right, fantastic. Thanks, Brian. Let's go to commissioner comments. So let's start with Commissioner Clayton.
None today.
Okay, Commissioner Kaler,
None at this time.
Commissioner Crowley,
I have none.
and Pro Tem Allen.
No comment.
And let me just add one thing about the splash pad. Yeah, it's a great response. What I appreciate about our city staff working with the people's desires, there were some comments made that it should be on later, and we responded. But yet at the same time, we want to be cognizant of the band playing till starting at 7:30, and so we were able to accommodate them for that as well. So people have mentioned about more sod. We could put more sod down, and so I just want to appreciate city staff responding to the customers. I call our citizens customers because they are. For being accommodative to their requests, and I want to thank all city staff for working toward that direction. Let's see, on the announcements, we just have a June 26th meeting. July 3rd, meeting has been canceled due to the 4th of July, and we'll be meeting again on July 10th.